A few moments ago, something believed to be a plane crashed into the south tower of the World Trade Center. I just saw flames inside. You can see the smoke coming out of the tower. We have no idea what it was. It was a tremendous boom just a few moments ago.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
I could close my eyes and recall flying into Shanksville, and there were a lot of emergency responders present in the field. They had rushed to the scene hoping they could help. Obviously, there's nothing they could do. Like a lot of Americans, I was angry. There's melancholy, there's sorrow for these good people, and you realize what happened in the towers and the Pentagon by then.
Once the shock of the attack was over, yes, people started realizing that the two oceans that had separated us from the rest of the world and the two countries in North and South who were our partners, that we were vulnerable. I think that was the first time America realized that how vulnerable they were.
Laura Bush was kind enough to come in for a memorial service. I remember my wife, Michelle, saying, whatever Tom and I could do to help you, support you and the president under these challenging times. And a couple of days later, the president gave me the phone call and asked me to come down to Washington. He had something in mind. He was pretty strong in his conviction. We have to make sure that this never happens again. We have to be prepared. The notion that the president would have entrusted to me the responsibility to pull together a team to achieve his goal of providing another layer of defense, and grateful for the opportunity to build it with so many extraordinary patriots. They were, patriots all.
Tom, you came to Washington to help us at a time when 9/11 had shaken our country to its very core. We had no homeland apparatus whatsoever. We couldn't talk to governors. We didn't know how to mobilize for a crisis within our borders brought by the horrors of an attack, the first attack on our capital and surrounding territory since the War of 1812.
Tom Ridge was willing to, after a distinguished career in politics, step into the role of leading this very large agency, and really did, in my judgment, provide the American people with a level of assuredness and projected confidence and strength.
It was a challenging time to figure out first what we needed to do. If you think about the first team in the White House, you've got all this anxiety going on, and you had to figure out what the scope of the mission was. Let's define it. You had to figure out how to go about addressing that. And you had to increase security at the same time. And then you had to explain this to people. You couldn't just go off and do it. You had to explain this to people to try to convey some reassurance at the same time we all knew the world had changed forever.
Tom Ridge was like the George Washington of the Department of Homeland Security. He was stepping into the unknown. He was stepping into the responsibility for counterterrorism, aviation security, maritime security, port security, border security, overseeing the Coast Guard, overseeing the counterterrorism mission, overseeing TSA, overseeing the Secret Service, overseeing FEMA.
In many ways, we were actually redesigning, if you will, the notion of what happens at the federal level has to find its way to the private sector and to the gubernatorial level at 50 different states, because there is absolutely no way, with the nature of the threat that we're dealing with, for somebody in a federal establishment to cover all the bases.
Secretary Ridge understood how important the morale of the new agency was going to be, and so he worked hard at it, both bringing the leadership together to define the mission, our priorities, and making that inclusive, but then also to the agents in the field. He knew how important it was that they bought into the new philosophy of Homeland Security and the new mission. So he spent time with them as well.
We took maybe 60 people or so representing all the agencies that were coming in our direction. And we went to that offsite with the intention of trying to design our own sense of mission, and it was the means by which the team was galvanized to get done what needed to get done, such that your little agency peak about we never used to do it that way could get mollified by the understanding of on the part of that agency that it was now part of a bigger challenge. And their requirement was to blend to the bigger challenge, not to be a pain in the ass about what they used to do or how they used to do it.
Tom Ridge could use as his middle name the word share because that's been his mantra from the beginning.
Remember, the first response was there was resistance. We need better coordination, better collaboration, better communication. Check, check, check. I got it. That's where I go from need to know. Hell, you don't need to know. You need to share because the private sector can help you if you trust them with the information.
Then you have to figure out how to do that, which it's cultural differences between agencies. It's even thinking about that. And are you giving away intel, right? And we all go through our security briefings and understand the importance of what can be shared and what can't be and those limits. But you have to push that in the appropriate way if you're going to engage with, a much broader network of people who can respond.
He was in part driving the effort to tear down those silos and to create more collaboration. And that realization that it was so important as we created this new agency was really one of the highest priorities for many of us.
There were several times, numerous times, that we had key threat intelligence coming in that pertained to a sector or a city that needed to be disseminated. And Governor Ridge, Secretary Ridge, would go to his counterpart and work with them to get it declassified so that threat intelligence became threat information, was able to be disseminated.
He is a great leader and inspires a lot of passion and commitment from the people that serve. And one of the big reasons is he has a bias for action. Let's try things. Let's be courageous. Let's do things that are meaningful. Let's be transparent and truthful. Let's be ethical. And let's go take the hill. And we're all empowered to do that. He listens incredibly well, and he supports you in taking initiative. I mean, that's a really powerful leadership quality, and it's the reason people were very passionate and proud to serve under his leadership.
Governor Ridge as a leader has been very empowering. We agree to a mission, and he empowers the people that work with him to go and do their job, and he supports them.
We had a huge responsibility to put together a system that checked in and checked out all of the international visitors coming to America. Is called U.S. Visit. And he entrusted me to get it done, and he held me accountable. But the key thing in government is that people have to make decisions, and he empowered me to make decisions, and then he backed me up. And I'll never forget, that was a key to success for Homeland Security, is the trust that he placed in those that served with him. And he's a great leader, he's a great friend, and he's a great patriot.
I have grown to think of him as Teddy Roosevelt's man in the arena. A great example was the Homeland Security Advisory System that he instituted, the color code system. He understood that the federal government had a responsibility to not only state and local officials and territory officials, but to citizens, to put this unforeseen new threat into context so they could understand it. Sure enough, when it was implemented, not only did he get criticized by the Washington bureaucracy, but he became the fodder of late night TV hosts. Now, I watched him during this period, and he didn't get upset. He laughed with them, because that's just him. It told me early on that Tom Ridge was a man who always would do the harder right over the easier wrong.
I think Tom Ridge's legacy as the first Secretary of Homeland Security is to really establish the footprint for all the rest of us in how we went about the job. So much of the job is the public-private partnership. We spend so much time at DHS simply dealing with the private sector, whether it's Major League Baseball or the airlines, commercial airlines, or critical infrastructure, because it's fundamental to our Homeland Security that they work effectively. And Tom Ridge recognized that right out of the gate as the first Secretary of Homeland Security.
He had the charisma, the smile on his face in the middle of maybe the most complex thing you've ever talked about in your life. And he was saying, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this and do it in a fashion that we're all going to be proud of at the other end of the day.
He loves America. His whole life is defined by public service, and he certainly demonstrated that in the post 9/11 environment in his service to our country.
Tom Ridge's legacy can be summed up in one word. That's leadership.
He understands the power of his office, that it's not about him, but his office can convey respect. I've stood with him at Coast Guard graduations. Every parent, every family member gets a picture. I mean, some of those things are just so dear to me that he takes that time to convey respect to whomever over and over again. I saw that, and I think it's very powerful.
If I use 3 words, it would be a man who cared. He cared deeply about his country. He cared deeply about ensuring that his country responds to crises that had never really presented themselves in this country before. He cared deeply for bipartisanship. He cared deeply for not only the people of Pennsylvania, but the people of South Dakota, my state, the people of California, the people of Texas. He cared. And because he cared so deeply, we are a better nation as a result.